Good evening, folks, and welcome to Ridgecrest Talk, the Thursday night edition. I'm Al Huey, along with my partner, Robert Eierman. And our special guests tonight are two former council members, both of them former mayors, I might add. And both, when we're talking about water and current and former council members, these two probably have more experience in that area than anybody around right now.
Over 33 years of experience leading this community. And of course, you always agreed with each other.
Absolutely. He's always wrong.
Yeah.
I agree with you. He's always wrong.
So, Steve, welcome.
Thank you.
Chip, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Chip. It's a pleasure having you.
So, we wanted to have you on specifically because you were on the council and you've been in the community for quite a while. You, Steve, from the 86.
Yes.
And you from 92. So you've heard a little bit about the water debate, I shall call it, here in the community. There's always been two sides. Going back even before you guys, you had the Carl Austin position as we have sufficient water.
And an open basin.
And an open basin. And Pierre Saint-Amand, we need to find water. We're gonna run out of water.
And it's a closed basin.
Right. And so now the county's proposing this land management proposal that's taken 18,000 properties.
Yes.
That's how many notices they sent out in the
Well,
Yukon
I don't think it's that many properties. I'm not sure because we got a notice even in the city, even though we weren't affected. And that's
The blue sheets, though, went to individual properties.
yes, and I don't think that the number was 18,000 of the blue, but it doesn't matter. It's,
Okay.
it's quite a bit of property.
All right. And so they're talking about rezoning, and there's been a couple of presentations. I don't know if either of you went to one, I think maybe, Chip, didn't you? One of the workshops or...
I actually went to the last public workshop where the council was trying to come up with their decision.
Oh,
Their
okay.
position on
But
it.
you haven't seen a
I haven't
presentation by the
official- I
county.
haven't-
Oh, okay.
No.
I've seen
I was
the
at
video.
the
Okay.
I was at the meeting with Craig James from the county.
Yes?
Spoke to the chamber,
Okay. All right.
so I did see some of that presentation.
Well, there's been two workshops, I guess, or that's what you call
Yeah,
them,
I
right?
think so.
Two workshops. The first one was pretty drastic, the way it was
Yes.
presented to the community. And then they came back some weeks later and did a second workshop, which was toned down a little bit. And my correlation to that is like the first one is like the framers of the Constitution. If they had ever been caught, they would have been treated as traitors. They would have been hung, beheaded, and had their entrails cut out and burned. Now that was an example of the first presentation. The
Sounds
second
like something about past
presentation
council
was
meetings.
toned down quite a bit, and now the county only wants to hang them.
Yeah.
But there's been quite a bit of discussion and debate. The water board's already issued a letter in support of what the county's doing. That was interesting. I was at a water board meeting when they were talking about doing that. And somebody from the audience, I won't say who, stood up and asked the board members, have you read the plan? And I will mention the board member that responded, that was Peter Brown, and he says, no, I have not read it. And they asked again, have you even read this second chapter, the first three, or the second volume, the first three chapters? And said, no. And they said, well, how can you vote in favor of something that you haven't read? Oh, I support it in concept, was his response. Now, the city's getting ready. There's going to be a presentation. Well, by the time this airs, no, it'll be next
That's right.
council meeting.
It's on the council agenda.
For
April
next
1st.
month.
That's right.
Yeah. April 1st.
Lorelei from the
April Fool's
county.
Day,
Yeah,
coincidentally.
Lorelei
No
from the
implication.
county planning department will come over and give a presentation to the council. And there's been a lot of changes
A lot.
to the plan from its conception to, I expect, what the council's going to hear next month. And then they're going to decide whether or not to send a letter, period. Either thumbs up or thumbs down.
You know, can I say one thing that
Yes.
that I think needs, I would like to have said, and I think Steve will agree with me, on the individual Lorelei OVI.
Oh, she's
Oh,
been
she's a
terrific.
great person.
We have dealt with bureaucrats for 33 years,
Uh-huh.
and I would rank her in the top 3 of quality
Absolutely.
individuals to deal with.
So would we.
And it's
So would
always
we.
been frustrating for me because lately she's been on what's perceived as the wrong side of a couple issues, and she's taken some personal attacks, not from
Yeah.
people in the know so much, but people that just assume I'm from the county, I'm here to hurt you. But but she is, you know, one
She's
of
just
those
doing her
folks,
job.
Yeah, that I would put a great
I
deal
think she was handed this task, and
Correct.
I think
And that's the next thing I would say. She's also a very good soldier.
yes.
So
and,
have to keep that in
but
mind.
she has done more than most bureaucrats I've ever seen do to try and alleviate the concerns that the property owner has. I agree. She has been wonderful through this.
So anyway, we want to hear from you on what your understanding was before the county ever came in and talked about rezoning here. Your opinion of the status of water, particularly in Ridgecrest, because you weren't so concerned with that in Inukarn. But what you heard over the years and what you've seen over the years, you were both involved in the 2005 BRAC. Water was discussed then. So we're going to go to break here in just a little bit, but we want to hear from you regarding that, and then any other input you might have, and then we'll get into this county land management plan. One of the concerns being we've never heard of doing a blanket rezoning like this ever. And I don't know if you guys, I don't recall the city ever doing it.
You do it when you initially set up
Okay,
an
sure.
entity, right?
Of course.
And so there is precedent for doing that. In this case, they are literally looking at, let's call it a difficulty that has arisen via public comments, meaning the use of water.
Okay.
And so they are taking a process that is used for another purpose, creating a community, creating counties, creating these land masses, and using it for revision. Now, is that unusual? I don't know. But I will say this. I'll kick it off this way. I remember...
Oh.
We have to go out. We'll
Okay.
get to it when we come back.
Okay.
great.
Come back, folks.
Well... know exactly
And welcome back to segment 2 of the Thursday evening edition of Ridgecrest Talk. I'm Robert Eierman, along with my partner Al Huey, and tonight we're privileged to have with us 2 former councilmen, 2 former mayors of the city of Ridgecrest, with over 33 years of experience of leadership in this community. And we're talking with them this evening about water.
And I would like to say that this example fits in my mind perfectly, and it may be a controversial view, but be careful what you ask for. That's what
Yep.
that is my entire message every time I get in, and I still am communicated with, as I'm sure Mr. Holloway is. There was a large concern about the proliferation of ag in the county.
Yes.
Those individuals went to the county and said, you need to do something. It's going to take all our water. We're very concerned. They beat the door. Now they've got this plan that a lot of us may not necessarily agree with or be happy with, but you asked for it. So let's try and get it as manageable as we can, but it's here and it's not going away.
Oh, no.
And that's maybe unfortunate for us. Some may think that that's overriding government reaching into our throats and pulling out our entrails, so to speak. But some of us asked for it, and we're getting it. Mr. Holloway?
On the same token, if you guys remember back in the, I want to say the mid-'90s, the entire country became unglued over the issue of a eminent domain case, I think in New Haven, Connecticut,
Right.
Yes.
Kilo.
over
The
a
Kilo,
commercial
yes.
endeavor, and in the state of California, we were involved. A proposition was passed in the state of California, limiting the ability of the eminent domain in California, which was actually not nearly as tough as it was perceived to be. But nevertheless, this is no different in my mind than an eminent domain issue when you're affecting the ability of someone to provide a livelihood. It's just because it happens to be a farm, you could substitute A, B, or C. And,
I agree.
And I think we need to be very aware of that. While it's very popular and very easy to get concerned about water because it's the crisis of the day, or it's been the crisis of the decade, it seems like, we need to be very careful about what's the next crisis and what industry are we going to attack. And I get very concerned about that and balancing the two. Like you've said, we absolutely need to conserve water or any natural resource when we can.
Right.
And nobody's disagreeing with that. But to put things in place that are going to, a lifetime for an individual, is 70 to 80 years. And yet you destroy that lifetime worrying about the future so much that you to destroy the dignity of this individual. And that concerns me.
Well, and what concerns me the greatest is they're not going the eminent domain route. They're going the taking without compensation
Correct.
route. And that is very frightening.
Even just last week, DWP agreed, to pay $700 per acre foot to farmers in Sacramento not to grow rice. $700 an acre foot, and the farmers in Sacramento found out they would make more profit by not growing rice than growing
Selling the
rice.
water.
Okay?
So at the bare minimum, and I'm probably way off the subject, but at the bare minimum, these farmers need to be compensated, and if the residents of Ridgecrest and this sphere of influence are burdened by that, by higher water rates, so be it, because we all contribute to this problem. It's not just the farmers. It's a group. And we may have to bear some of that burden, and that's why my point was, whatever this plan comes out to, it should not put the burden on a small sphere of the group in this influence area. And that's what I think a lot of people in Ridgecrest have not thought. Because we actually have a very good value, believe it or not, based on the rest of the state and our water rates. As crazy as, I paid $2 for actual water last month, although my bill was about $50.
Right.
But still, that's much lower than the rates around the state, even in this region.
I absolutely agree. The pain is going to need to be felt reasonably across the board. And if my understanding of the way the county is trying to position themselves, they are trying to move in that direction somewhat. Now, is it going to be completely equal? My understanding is no. Okay, I would not lie to you. But as we have discussed in the past as a previous council, as my understanding is from the Water District, Mr. Don Zabita himself, discussions with LADWP about tapping the aqueduct are plausible. It hasn't been fully explored to my understanding, but it would be extremely expensive to build the infrastructure, and as a partial solution, besides conserving, besides recycling, besides gray water, besides the technologies that we have, building that piece of infrastructure, in my personal opinion, is vitally needed for sustainability of the future, and we're all going to get hit with that cost, and that's not going to please people.
No, it's not. And when you talk about the shared difficulty, I wonder how many people in Ridgecrest would feel real good if the county came in and said, you need to shut off your evaporative cooler. That's just not a reasonable use of water with the current situation. And so we have to, in my opinion, like you said, all share the burden. And if that means that we need to have a $10 a month fee that goes into a trust fund that's going to be used to buy the farmers out, pay them not to grow, whatever the situation is, so that they don't consume water, that maybe that's what we have to do.
What's really concerning to me, and if I was on the council right now, is this discussion is dangerous. The way the context of it today, because the overriding theme is we have a water problem. We don't have enough water.
Right.
This city has to grow in the next 20 to 50 years, period. Because if we maintain the exact level of services we have today, we're going to require about $2 to $3 million more in our general fund in the next 20 years just to maintain where we are today. If we have people looking at our area around the country and all they see, because when economic development happens, the process of elimination takes place.
Right.
Water problem, eliminate it,
Eliminate.
no further.
Right.
Somebody needs to say, no matter what the water situation is, we will solve it, whether we have to buy water or whatever. That's the goal.
Stop.
Totally agree with you, yes.
Well, it's time for another break. When we come back, we'll continue this discussion about water. Join us when we come back. Welcome back. We're wrapping it up here on our Thursday night edition with our two special guests, former Mayor Chip Holloway and former Mayor Steve Morgan. And we were talking about water. Now, before the land management proposal came by from the county, what was your opinion or belief of the water situation here in Ridgecrest?
Absolutely.
Steve.
I've known through the data that we've received from the water district and the reports that I have read that we have been in overdraft and that we needed to do something. We've done Band-Aid fixes up till now, and we've come to a point where something more has to be done. That's what I believe.
You, Chip.
Well, I grew up in that, or got here in the time of the whole open basin, closed basin debate. So
No. It was going on way before you got here.
I mean, that was the first
It was coming to the
first
surface,
semblance
yeah.
that I got of anything
Okay.
about water, and it always intrigued me who was right, because it was, one thing that always frustrated me as a council member is sometimes you're forced to make decisions
Answer the
on
question.
imperfect science. But the thing that kind of put me at rest was the BRAC. I was mayor during the BRAC process.
Yes.
And when we had to go, one of the biggest issues our opponents came up way back then was, we don't have enough water in this valley. You need to close that base or
Right.
or reduce the mission. And we had the BRAC report that came out, and I was
I'm
briefed.
glad you brought that I have
And
a
what's that
copy
BRAC
here.
report say?
The issue of water during the BRAC report, during the commission or committee that was put together. And this was information they got from the water district. The Indian Wells Valley Water District has an annual water supply on average to keep the population of 90,000 in domestic water. That was part of the report. The full report,
That was actually preliminary.
or preliminary.
Yes.
And here,
The actual-
after it was completed,
Yes.
again, the Indian Wells Valley Water District has an annual water supply on average to keep the anticipated post-BRAC community in domestic water for over 160 years. Now, that's a bit different than the Todd report, wouldn't you say?
Exactly. And when we first heard that, my first question was, you mean those trees are sucking up the water of the equivalent of 35,000 residents? That just came to my mind as an individual, not politically or anything. And I started questioning it, and I was trying to stay at a distance. But and then after the BRAC, the other evidence that came forth, we went through this whole conservation, by 2020, the water districts were required to reduce, and our wastewater plant issue. We thought when we were going through this BRAC process, the capacity of our plant probably reached about as high as 73% or something like
Yes,
that.
I remember
But
that.
then when the water conservation kicked in, it started going down. So at least in my mind, although we were going this direction and we needed to address it, we had started addressing it. So between those two numbers, in my mind, we didn't have a water problem. And somebody brought the question up to me a while back. Well, why didn't Supervisor McQuiston bring this issue up way back when he was on the county supervisor for 16 years? I said, Well, maybe nobody perceived there was a problem back then.
Correct.
And everything that I've seen prior to the last couple years, there was no problem.
Right. I think my personal opinion is this is somewhat of a created crisis. You have the California legislature doing the GSAs, the Ground Sustainability Act, and requiring the agencies. And I think that the current bandwagon is there's a water crisis when there really isn't. And you know, it's like you pointed out. Is it really what the Navy and what this community want to put out, that we have a water crisis? And how is that beneficial to the mission of the Navy? How do you attract people here?
Right.
And much less businesses.
So I know there's a question that you want to ask,
Yes.
and I'm just going to go right into it.
Well, let me pose a question so they know.
Go ahead.
If you were sitting on the council today, and the county has this proposal that you've heard about to rezone all those properties, and the council decides they want to submit a letter to the county, would you be in favor of what the county's doing or oppose it?
Okay. First of all, to the city council members who may be viewing this, remember this is my personal opinion, and I don't envy what you are going through because I've been there and I respect the care in the decision making you're going to do. However, my personal opinion from the information that I've had from the past and my experience, I actually do support what the county is doing. I believe they'll be able to tweak it over time, but for sustainability of the valley, even though we have wildly varying reports in front of us, and we just don't have St. Armand and Austin, we have Todd, and there's another one.
Navy.
David Williams.
David Williams,
The
okay.
Navy.
We had these
the
wildly
Navy.
swinging reports. The bottom line is we don't know. We need to do something for sustainability for the long-term benefit of China Lake and Ridgecrest and the Indian Wells Valley residents. So I would support it.
Okay.
Wow.
Chip?
Go ahead.
I've already stated publicly and recommended to this council, and I agree with Steve, I don't envy the council or the county supervisor or any of the county staff, but I would take a position of oppose unless amended. And the reason for that is I've been in this process with the League of California Cities many times. And when you're trying to get to a conclusion on whatever side of an issue you are, you look at your opponents and you look at your supporters. And if you have an opposed position, you're totally disregarded from that point forward. And the people trying to push their agenda forward ignore you as irrelevant. If you stay as opposed unless amended, there's an assumption with the right information you can be brought to the support side. And I think, like Steve, I mean, this debate is a good debate. The tone of the debate is wrong, and some of the solutions that have already been in quasi absolutely necessary, I disagree because there's so much information. You would not convict a criminal based on the level of information. It would be a hung jury or a mistrial based on all this information.
Yep.
And we're going to make decisions that, in essence, could kill some industries. Maybe not some people. Literally could kill some people. Have lifetime investments in this.
I didn't say that.
But those of us that are the loudest have the lead. Again, I go back to that burden. Those of us that are the loudest on the issue, other than obviously the people that are absolutely affected, have the least at risk. And that's.
I just want to get in one comment. As it has always been in the past, I partially agree with you, Chip, and I totally disagree with you, Steve.
It's like all the time.
And that's our show for tonight. Join us again next week. Next week, it's going to be interesting. We have a senator and an assemblywoman coming there.
Nice.
A senator that knows a lot about water.